Revenge with Karen.
I knew something was off the second I walked into the conference room and found the whiteboard still covered in last week's scribbles about strategic vision pivots. A bunch of nonsense Darren liked to spew after 3 craft beers and half a Teg's playlist. The markers were dry, the room smelled like stale cologne and someone's panic sweat, and no one had bothered resetting the chairs. Which meant, once again, I was the first one in, setting the stage for a meeting I wasn't even invited to. 12 years. 12 damn years of showing up before sunrise, keeping the circus from collapsing on itself, and my reward, being asked to refill the mini fridge and scrub passive-aggressive notes off the team kitchen Keurig. Meanwhile, Darren, the human LinkedIn post, was too busy optimizing upward workflows to remember who actually ran the back-end systems, me. Always me. But in Darren's eyes, it was just part of the furniture. Beige, functional, ignored. Macy, on the other hand, Macy got to sit at the table. 24, maybe 25, with a job title that changed depending on who you asked. Executive liaison, special projects consultant, or Darren's personal favorite, strategy co-pilot. No one actually knew what she did, aside from wear impractical heels, giggle inappropriately during meetings, and use phrases like synergy vibes. Been here less than a year and somehow managed to become the face of operations updates, despite the fact that she once asked me what a CSV file was. No, seriously, that Macy. And still, I was the one arranging chairs, replacing dried-out expo markers, and printing slide decks that nobody read. Darren liked to drop a last-minute Karen, "Can you handle setup?" As he breezed past me with his phone glued to his ear, pretending to be important. Never mind that the only reason any of his performance reports made sense was because I'd prepped every data point and formatted the whole thing into something boardroom legible. I didn't even get a nod of acknowledgement when he took credit. Now, listen, before we go any further, do me a tiny favor. If you're still listening to this, tap that subscribe button. Over 90% of people just pass through without subscribing, and trust me, every new click helps keep these stories coming. Oh, and hit that like button too if you've ever been asked to do someone else's job while being ignored for the credit. It's like handing Darren his coffee and his bonus check. Anyway, back to the room. After taping a loose cable back into the floor runner, I glanced up at the ceiling camera, still blinking like a dying firefly. It had been on the fritz for weeks. Some glitch after the last software update. It submitted a low-priority ticket to IT 2 Fridays ago, but no one really cared unless a server actually exploded. Still, after that weird incident last week, someone's laptop went missing, and HR did a whole "let's all be vigilant" email. I figured it was time to nudge it again. I logged into the facility's request portal and added a quick follow-up. Nothing major. Just a note. Camera 4 main floor still inconsistent. Can confirm visual flicker during night mode. Then I got back to prepping the slide deck for the strategy meeting I wouldn't be attending. Darren's latest masterpiece. A 23-slide spectacle of buzzwords, inflated charts, and a bonus projection so padded it could have doubled as a mattress ad. Macy was slated to present half of it. Darren loved saying things like we're grooming her for leadership, which, coming from a 45-year-old man with 2 pending HR complaints and 0 shame, was as gross as it sounds. I didn't say anything. I never do. I just nodded, made the printouts, topped off the Keurig pods, and stayed invisible. That's the secret to surviving this long, be the ghost that keeps the building standing. Still, as I closed the conference room door behind me and heard Macy's laugh echo from Darren's office, something in me snapped, not loud or dramatic, just a hairline fracture in the quiet. A pause, a silent knowing. I didn't know what I was looking for, not yet, but I'd find it, because ghosts, we see everything. 3 days later, someone from marketing had their iPad stolen off their desk. Not even a nice one, just a cracked screen dinosaur with a rhinestone pop socket, but the whole department acted like someone had launched a ransomware attack on national security. Suddenly, the cameras were very important. IT sent out a blanket update. Firmware patches, system refresh, blah, blah, blah. Then, tucked at the bottom of a reply-all email chain about shared vigilance. I saw it. My original ticket had been closed. Camera 4 was marked as resolved. Now, technically, I wasn't required to verify their work. But after 12 years of babysitting half-baked solutions from the IT team, I learned that resolved could mean anything from we actually fixed it to we unplugged it and hoped for the best. So, after Darren and Macy left for their daily 2-hour synergy huddle at that overpriced smoothie place, I logged in through my old facility's admin panel and pulled the footage from camera 4. Just a standard spot check, 5 minutes tops. I scrubbed backward through the last few nights to make sure night mode kicked in properly. Software usually does a timestamp overlay with a black and white filter test, just a boring scan of cubicles in grayscale. That's what I expected. What I got was Darren and Macy. Tuesday night, 11:14 p.m. I paused the video. There was Darren slouched in his office chair, tie undone, shirt untucked, looking like a Wall Street meltdown with a Bluetooth headset. Macy stood beside him, one hand on his shoulder, the other typing on his keyboard. I blinked. Maybe she was showing him something. But then he swiveled slightly, lifted his hand, and tapped something on the desk, looked like the project tracker app. Macy sat down in his chair, logged into his terminal, and began clicking through files like she owned the place. It wasn't just weird, it was wrong. I zoomed in. Camera quality was low def, but I could still make out the sidebar navigation in the interface, budget sheets, milestone timelines, and approval queues. Now, let me explain something. Darren's terminal wasn't just any laptop. It was linked to our internal authorization system, meaning anything done through his login was legally bound to his authority. Passwords, certifications, signature trails, it all lived under his profile. No assistant, no matter how perky, should ever be touching that machine. And Macy, she wasn't just touching it, she was navigating it like she'd done it before. I kept watching. Darren leaned in at one point, clearly drunk, judging by the way he slurred a word I lip-read as close out. Then he laughed, stood up, and Jesus Christ, poured something amber from the office minibar into a coffee mug. Macy giggled, clicked a drop-down, and hit submit on something that made my stomach turn. A red outlined form titled Project Completion Phase 3. That project was still open. We hadn't hit Phase 3's actual deliverables yet. Hell, just emailed the vendor 2 days ago about delayed assets. I scrolled forward 10 seconds. Darren took the seat back and re-entered the dashboard, clearly using his credentials now. He glanced over at Macy, who was sitting on the arm of his chair, and nodded. Another click, another approval, a celebratory toast with matching mugs. Then the screen faded to black as the lights shut off. I sat frozen for a full minute. Then I started breathing again. Shallow. Slow. A cold stomach, heart beat in your eardrum kind of breathing. What the hell did I just watch? I checked the timestamp. 11:14 p.m. to 11:21 p.m. 7 minutes of footage that felt like a silent scream wrapped in HR violations and felony dumbassery. The kind of footage that makes lawyers wake up sweating. I pulled 2 other nights from the system. Same time range, same office, same pair, like clockwork. And in each, the same thing. Darren drinking, Macy clicking, approval forms flashing across the screen like digital confetti. There was no way this was training or mentorship or any of the other crap Darren liked to slap over his gross behavior. This was calculated, routine, covered by darkness and ignored cameras. Until now, I didn't even feel angry yet, just tight, like someone had put a vice on my lungs and was turning the crank slowly. But I felt something worse crawling in, a suspicion, because these weren't just late-night flings or questionable logins. These were transactions, documented, time-stamped, all of it pointing toward fraud, and one tiny, awful detail kept echoing in my head. That form from Tuesday night, it had my name on it, not his, not hers. Mine. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I just lay there staring at the ceiling fan, counting each slow rotation like it could erase what I'd seen. But the images wouldn't leave me. Darren's sloppy smirk, Macy's fake innocent clicky clicks, and that got him approval form with my name on it, like I was some half-asleep accomplice in their little embezzlement after-party. By morning, I'd switched from stunned to surgical. I came into the office earlier than usual, which is saying something, and slid into the empty break room like a ghost. I poured stale coffee from yesterday's pot and sipped it cold. Didn't matter. I wasn't tasting anything anymore. It just needed the caffeine to keep my hands steady. I logged back into the camera system under my legacy credentials, the ones Darren probably forgot I had. Half the tech stack was so old, nobody ever revoked access unless you left or died. I filtered footage from the last 60 days, narrowed it to 10 p.m. 2 a.m., and pulled every clip that showed movement on the executive floor. There weren't many. Most nights the place was a mausoleum. But they're nights, like fireflies in a jar. June 28th, July 14th, August 3rd, always within 24 hours of a major financial report or project closeout. Clip after clip showed Darren and Macy slinking in through the side elevator, swiping into his office, and doing God knows what with company devices. Sometimes they brought takeout. Once, I swear, she had a damn Slurpee. The casualness made it worse. Like they were so comfortable misusing the system, didn't even bother pretending it was legit. One video stood out. July 14th, 11:46 p.m. Darren stumbled into frame, clearly drunk. He missed the handle of his own door twice before Macy opened it for him. He waved his arms around, theatrically, like a conductor leading an orchestra of lies. Then he sat down at his desk and started logging into the financial module. Macy stood behind him, pointing at the screen like she was directing him. His mouse hovered over the adjust budget allocation field, and he clicked it with the flourish of a man signing a check that wasn't his. He typed something in, I zoomed, squinted, and screen capped it. Project, Skylark, adjustment, plus $42,500. Then he hit enter. Macy leaned down and kissed the top of his head. If I hadn't already felt the icy creep of betrayal, that would have done it, because Skylark was my project. Not mine, like I owned it, but mine in the sense that I'd spent the last 6 months wrangling vendors, timelines, and budgets just to keep it breathing. We'd been scraping nickels out of couch cushions to hit phase milestones, and here he was padding the numbers like it was Monopoly money. And then, because of course, it was my credentials listed under the reviewed by field on the financial export report the following morning. I knew I didn't log that. I couldn't have. I was on PTO that day, but the system had my signature on it anyway. I pulled the audit log from our internal system. It took me a few tries to remember the right access tunnel. IT had quietly changed the front-end UI, but back-end, still dusty and wide open if you knew where to look. I ran a credential trace on the document. Input terminal, Darren's laptop, input user, K. Andrews 42. Login time, 11:44 p.m. IP location. Exec suite 12, signature key match, failed. That's what did it. Because every digital signature in our system is bound to a key pair. And if you spoof it, even if you copy the username, it won't match the private key hash unless it's the real user. And mine hadn't been used that night, which meant forgery, plain as day. Their mistake, Darren's idiotic overconfidence, forgot that faking my name didn't mean faking my key. I started cataloging every instance like I was building a case file. Clip, timestamp, financial entry, audit log. I even set up a little spreadsheet with color-coded flags. Red, forged approvals yellow, inappropriate after-hours logins green, visibly intoxicated activity by the time Macy sauntered in at 9:14 a.m. with her iced coffee and zero shame. I'd already compiled 9 separate incidents. 9 that I knew of, and those were just the ones caught on camera. I didn't say a word. I nodded politely when she waved at me like we were girlfriends. I let her pass, let her click-clack her heels toward Darren's office where no doubt she'd sit on the corner of his desk and brainstorm new ways to sink this company while looking cute. But inside, I was sharpening every receipt into a blade. Quiet, clean, soon to be unforgettable. Turns out, being ignored for 12 years has its perks. No one notices when you're forgotten on half a dozen internal systems, especially not when management is too busy sniffing their own buzzwords to double-check access controls. Darren had told HR he streamlined roles last quarter. What he meant was, he gave Macy shiny dashboards and stripped my admin status on paper. But back-end, I still had the keys. I knew exactly where to look. I booted up the legacy audit console from a forgotten utilities server we used to call the graveyard. Ugly UI, but pure power if you knew the ropes. Most of the new team didn't even know it existed, let alone how to navigate it. I ran a query under Darren's credentials. The system flagged 23 authorization logs over a 90-day window that had one thing in common. They were all linked to Macy's fingerprints. By fingerprints, I mean mouse movement heat maps, click velocities, and typing cadence. Yeah, the system logs that now, and guess what? Macy types like she's texting with acrylic nails on a trampoline. It stood out like a clown at a funeral. But the real kicker was what she was accessing. Bonus Tracker V3. XLSX sounds innocent enough, right? Except that file only goes live during milestone reconciliations. Once a project hits its goal, performance bonus triggers based on declared labor, material usage, and actual outcome. It's audited quarterly, and the bonus pool, well, let's just say it makes Christmas look like pocket change. I opened the most recent version. My gut turned inside out. Every project Darren managed in the last 3 months had inflated cost line items. Contractor hours doubled. Material surcharges added post facto. In one case, backdated a consulting invoice from a vendor we hadn't worked with since 2021. All that artificial padding pushed each project just high enough to trigger bonus eligibility. And the payouts? Darren, $57,000 Macy, $18,500 me, $0. But my name was listed as the project liaison for 4 of them. It gets worse. On the Skylark Phase 3 bonus form, someone had digitally signed my name again. But this time, they went full stupid. Not just my username, but a full signature block, copied and pasted from an old onboarding form I'd filled out years ago. They even used Comic Sans for the title line. Comic Sans. I pulled the original document from HR's vault to compare. Side by side, it was laughable. The forged one had jagged pixelation around the signature box, like someone had cropped it from a PDF and stretched it with a potato. They were either arrogant or panicked. Maybe both. Either way, they crossed a line. Up to this point, it could have been chalked up to gross negligence or Darren being a whiskey-drunk idiot. But now it was full-blown fraud, federal level, with my name tacked on like a post-it note to a grenade. I started building a folder, one for the camera footage, one for each audit trail, one with a TXT file titled for legal counsel, do not delete. Then I created off-site backups. Google Drive under a burner email, external hard drive, air-gapped. One copy uploaded to my personal cloud storage with 0 metadata and labeled Family Photos 2009. I even hid a USB stick behind a fake outlet plate in the janitor's closet. Because yeah, I've seen what happens when people start panicking and wiping drives. Every time I saved a new piece of evidence, I felt steadier. No more stomach knots, no more shallow breaths, just slow, deliberate movements. Like I was dusting off a machine I hadn't used in years, one made of spine and spite. Let them have their smoothies. Let them giggle behind closed doors and pad their bonuses with fraudulent flair. I was done being a ghost in this place, because ghosts, we remember everything, and we keep receipts. They didn't even try to whisper. I was down in the print room, unjamming the same Ricoh copier that's been choking on cardstock since Obama was in office, when I heard Darren's voice through the vent, like a raccoon chewing on smug. He was in the hallway outside the executive suite, yapping to Macy like he was narrating a TED talk no one asked for. Board meetings set for Friday. Gonna pitch the Q3 numbers hard, show M how we squeezed 20% more out of ops without adding headcount. Macy snorted, "That's 'cause you are the headcount." They both laughed, that gross little power couple cackle, the kind that sounds like dry heaves wrapped in nepotism. Then Darren added, "Might be time to trim some dead weight after the bonus clears. You know, clean house." That's when the copier made a sound I'd never heard before, like it was choking in solidarity. Dead weight. Right. Both knew who he meant. I didn't flinch. Not anymore. The Karen he was used to, the one who stayed 2 hours late without thanks, who nodded politely when passed over, who cleaned the damn coffee pot every Friday like a penance, that Karen was gone. What was left was precise, cold, and tired of waiting for justice to show up on someone else's agenda. Back at my desk, I opened Outlook and typed one sentence. Per routine compliance cadence, be conducting a systems integrity review this Friday morning. Legal observer looped in for visibility. CC'd, Board Legal Liaison Evelyn H. Marnell, subject line, quarterly compliance exec ops snapshot review, no urgency. No drama, just noted. Then I got to work on the bomb. The evidence folder was already loaded, encrypted, and mirrored. Now it needed shape, a frame, a way to speak for itself without needing me in the room. Created a new document titled, Suggested Review Before Vote, Supplemental Materials for Exec Ops Q3 Bonus Approval. The index alone was a masterpiece of polite destruction. Item 01 Security Footage Excerpt July 14th, 11:46 p.m., 11:53 p.m. Item 02 Bonus Form. Skylark Phase 3 Forged Signature Analysis. Item 03 Audit Log Comparison Credential Mismatch Report. Item 04 Approval Chain Map Darren and Macy Unauth. Access Overlay. Item 05 Expense Trail Inflated Materials and Ghost Vendor Invoice. Item 06 Payroll Extract Bonus Payout Discrepancy Timeline. Item 07 Compliance Violation Summary Section 6.1 F Breach Outline. Item 08 Backup Signatures Karen A. Keeper Validation Screenshots was all laid out like a polite throat clearing before the guillotine. I inserted brief notes after each item, factual, emotionless. Note, forgery evidenced by mismatched digital key signature. Note, approval executed while manager was visibly impaired. See Item 01. I kept it clean. No editorializing, no all-caps rage, just receipts and timestamps. The holy grail of corporate truth. When I finished, exported the whole thing to a password-protected PDF and wrote the decryption key on a yellow sticky note. Karen was here 42. I didn't laugh. I didn't cry. I just folded it once, stuck it under a coaster on Evelyn's reserved seat in the boardroom, and walked away. Meanwhile, Darren spent the rest of the day pacing around like he was prepping to win a damn Oscar. Practicing lines, massaging spreadsheets he didn't understand, slapping Macy on the back like she'd just cured cancer. I passed them in the hall once. He gave me that little fake smile nod, the kind of man gives his dry cleaner right before ghosting on the bill. Macy didn't even look up from her phone. Good. Let them keep thinking I was the help. Let them assume I'd still be fetching lattes and wiping their digital fingerprints off the crime scene they built in plain sight. Because Friday was coming. And this time, I had the floor, even if I wasn't in the room. Friday arrived wearing its usual mask, bland, fluorescent, and overconfident. By 8:17 a.m., I was at my desk, sipping the same lukewarm break room coffee I always made for everyone else. But this time, it wasn't an act of submission, it was a ritual. The calm before the reckoning. I wore navy slacks, a wrinkle-free blouse, and a face that told no stories. Just the right shade of invisible. Darren strolled in at 9:06, smelling like overpriced cologne and ambition. His hair was too perfect, his tie too bold, and the way he smacked the side of my desk with 2 fingers as he passed. That was just extra seasoning. Macy trailed behind him in one of her aggressively professional dresses, fitted, bright, designed to scream "I belong here" loud enough to drown out the truth. At 9:13, the vultures arrived, board members, assistants, finance weasels, all brushing lint off lapels and whispering about leaning in. I stayed put, pretending to fix a typo in the Q2 budget file that no one would read again. They didn't notice me. They never did. Then came the line. "Hey, Karen," Darren said, pausing by my desk with that fake-friendly smirk he wore like a badge of honor. "Would you mind grabbing coffee for the exec team? One of those variety carriers. Let's make it look sharp." I turned, slow and even, looked right at him, smiled like the lights were already dimming behind his eyes. Of course. And with that, I stood, walked to the break room, and placed the order that would be the last thing I'd ever do under his thumb. 6 coffees. Black, cream, sweetener, decaf, sugar-free, the whole personality parade. I prepped them into one of the cardboard carriers, double-checked the lids, and added a box of stirras with passive-aggressive grace. But before I left the room, I reached into my purse and pulled out the final piece. A matte black USB, labeled with a plain white sticker, Quarterly Budget Backup KA. It slid perfectly into the lining of the carrier, taped underneath, just out of sight. Then I made my way to the boardroom. They were already seated, half listening to Darren warm up the room with bad jokes and buzzword soup. Evelyn, the legal liaison, was seated third from the left, her posture straight, her pen poised, laptop open but untouched. I placed the coffees on the tray table by the back wall, and as I passed Evelyn's chair, I gently pulled the USB loose and slipped it beneath her leather portfolio. Smooth, precise, like resetting a bone. Darren didn't even notice. He was too busy pretending the clicker in his hand gave him power. I exited without a word, took the long way around, and entered the observation room, underused corner space behind one-way glass where HR usually hides when someone's getting axed. Today, it was mine. I sat down, crossed my legs, took a breath. 9:31 a.m. The lights dimmed. The projector came to life with its usual sputter and hum, painting Darren's title slide across the front wall. Q3 Operational Excellence and Strategic Wins. You could almost hear the self-congratulation vibrating off it. Clicked forward to slide 2 and began his opening salvo. Growth metrics, trimmed fat, optimized overhead, total fantasy. Macy nodded at the right moments, her hands folded in that carefully curated posture of someone cosplaying as competent. Across the room, Evelyn glanced down at her portfolio. She paused. Then she opened it, slid the USB into her laptop. She didn't interrupt, not yet, not her style. But I saw her eyebrow arch, flicker in her eyes as item 01 auto-played. July 14th, 11:46 p.m. Darren's voice kept droning on, unaware that the countdown had started. In the dark, I smiled, small, controlled, inevitable, because I wasn't hoping. I was waiting. Slide 6 had just hit the screen, some bloated flowchart Darren called the success funnel, when Evelyn held up one hand. No flourish. No panic. Just a precise interruption, pausing a song you've heard too many times. Before we proceed, she said evenly, we received some supplemental materials this morning. I'd like to present them now, briefly. Darren blinked, confused. The room shifted slightly. Chairs creaked. Macy's lips tightened just enough to betray the first flicker of panic. Evelyn didn't wait for approval. She tapped her keyboard twice and projected the contents of the USB to the screen. No warning. No lead-in. Just silence and then video. The timestamp glowed in the bottom corner. July 14th, 11:46 p.m. The camera angle was slightly tilted, old, maybe grainy, but the picture was clear enough. Macy walked into Darren's office with a takeout bag in one hand and a tablet in the other. She sat down at his desk, logged in, and began clicking through files with casual confidence. Darren stumbled in moments later, loosened tie and all, holding a whiskey glass and slurring half-coherent instructions. Go to Skylark. Yeah, phase 3, just close it, we're ahead anyway. Nobody checks. Macy, it says Karen didn't sign off yet. Darren, doesn't matter, use the template, change the footer. Her name's on the last one, just hell copy-paste. It's fine. In the boardroom, the temperature dropped 5 degrees. Darren, now standing at the front like a kindergarten teacher caught cheating on a spelling test, visibly paled. Video continued. Macy opened the bonus calculator dashboard, entered numbers, pushed Darren's laptop toward him like a server delivering a bill. He clicked submit. Then he toasted her with his drink. The playback stopped. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was compressed, tight, waiting to explode. Evelyn looked up. Let's roll it back 10 seconds, she said, and hit rewind. The scene repeated, this time eyes sharper. Board members leaned in. Them murmured something under his breath. Another shook his head slowly, like he was watching a dog lick an electrical outlet. Then the voice command again. Use the template. Change the footer. The screen froze. No more slides. No more success funnels. Darren opened his mouth to speak, but the board chair, an older man named Richard with eyebrows like iron filings, lifted a hand without looking at him. The gesture meant, no, sit down. He turned to HR, whispered something. HR nodded and began quietly pulling a red folder from her briefcase. Macy looked down at the table, her face drained of its performative polish. An investor stood up, not one of the quiet ones. A woman from Eastbridge Capital who usually spent meetings sipping cucumber water and skimming investor reports on her phone. "Is this a joke?" she asked flatly. No one answered. Evelyn, ever surgical, clicked to the next file in the folder. "Item 02, she said. Bonus form, Skylark Phase 3. Forged signature analysis." The screen showed a side-by-side comparison. One, a pristine signature labeled Karen Andrews Original with a matching digital key hash. The other, a pixelated knockoff clearly pasted into a blank form. Then came the overlay, login metadata. Submitted by Darren K. Terminal ID. Exec Suite 12 time. 11:51 p.m. credential match. Failed. The screen faded to black again. Silence in the room wasn't just awkward now, it was deadly. Corporate, legal, and existential all at once. Macy's hand moved toward her purse. Darren shifted like he might speak, but Richard didn't even glance up. Instead, he looked directly at Evelyn. "Continue." Evelyn adjusted her glasses, clicked one more time, and opened the final document in the chain. A PDF, bold-headed, bloodless in tone. A policy document every manager signs without reading. Cleared her throat, her voice low but cutting. Company Policy Manual Section 6.1F. Any manager found to have knowingly manipulated internal records, falsified documentation, or misused system access for the purpose of personal or financial gain shall be subject to immediate dismissal, with no severance consideration, and full liability exposure pending legal review. She let the silence sit there. Let it stain the air. Then, if the system itself wanted justice, the projector displayed two signatures. Left side, Karen Andrews document 1102 clean. Stamped, hash-matched, verified against back-end logs. Right side, Karen Andrews Skylark close-out fuzzy. Pasted, digital hash failed. Underneath, a visual overlay of the forgery file's edit trail showing timestamps, machine ID, and last login, Darren's. Evelyn didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. Darren finally broke. "Look, okay, this is getting blown out of proportion," he said, chuckling, but the sound didn't reach his eyes. That was clearly a clerical mix-up. Macy probably pulled the wrong file. "We've been working late. Things slip through the cracks, right? I mean, come on, we're talking about one form." He turned, grasping for backup, and found only silence. Even Macy stared straight ahead, frozen in her chair like she'd been taxidermied in place. "Hell," he added, voice rising, "is a team failure, if anything. Macy's just been eager, she's learning. Sometimes enthusiasm gets ahead of process." No one nodded. Evelyn tilted her screen slightly, revealing a terminal log in harsh grayscale, 3 distinct logins from Darren's account, each corresponding to fraudulent form submissions. She waited. Darren's mouth opened again, ready to fumble something else, but the next voice didn't come from the front of the room. It came from the back. Steady. Clear. And a voice that slices without raising volume. "Except you logged in with your credentials," I said. 3 times. Same terminal, same office. Same timestamp. Every head in the room turned. I didn't move, didn't need to. Just sat behind the glass, hands folded, eyes locked on him like a surgeon watching a patient realize where the incision is. Darren's lips parted. Nothing came out. The silence that followed wasn't shocked, it was done. Like the room had already decided. The company's immune system had finally recognized the infection. The board chair closed her folder. "HR," he said quietly, "you'll prepare the necessary documentation." Then, looking directly at Darren, "You are no longer authorized to speak on behalf of this company. Effective immediately." He turned to Macy. "You too." Macy opened her mouth, but her voice failed her. Her hands hovered midair, lost, before retreating into her lap like birds folding in their wings. No one applauded. No one gasped, because the moment didn't need drama. It had truth, and that was enough. Behind the glass, I blinked once, then exhaled. 10 minutes. That's all it took. HR didn't pause, no drawn-out investigation. No polite "let's talk outside." Just a thick manila envelope for Darren and another for Macy, handed across the conference table like invoices from karma itself. "Effective immediately," the HR rep said, voice flat, firm. "Access has been revoked. Security will escort you to collect personal items. Please leave all company devices in the room." Darren looked like he might argue. Macy looked like she might cry. Neither did either. They stood, quietly, like shadows retreating from the light. Darren fumbled for his phone, but it was already disconnected. HR had sent the kill command the moment Evelyn said credentials mismatch. As they were let out, no one spoke. No thank yous, no sorries, no desperate gasps of explanation. Just shoes squeaking on tile, the sound of a career collapsing in real time. Once the door shut behind them, the board chair looked to HR. Pause all current bonus approvals. Full audit of Darren's division. I want eyes on every approval trail since April. Evelyn, you'll lead. He tapped the table once, like final punctuation, then looked down at his tablet. At that moment, a screen in the corner flickered on. CEO, remote from New York, face like weathered granite. He'd missed most of the meeting, caught in a client summit. But now he was here, and he'd clearly been briefed. He leaned forward. Karen, he said, voice crackling slightly over the speaker. The board turned. For the first time in a long time, they looked at me. I stood, walked through the glass door, my heels the only sound in the room. The CEO tilted his head, studied me like I was an equation he hadn't solved yet. Then he asked a single question. How long have you known? I didn't blink. Long enough to back it all up, I said. He smiled. Just a little. Good, he replied. We need someone with that kind of memory. He turned to the board chair. Offer her the role, Director of Compliance Transition. Effective immediately. A pause, then a nod, then a ripple of agreement. I could have asked for bonus. A corner office. Hell, own assistant. But instead, I gave them one condition. I'll take the job, I said, but I want a locked office. My own keycard access and working cameras. That got a few smiles. Evelyn nodded once, tight and satisfied. As the room dissolved into logistics, who would take Darren's place, who would handle external messaging, I stood by the window and watched the security escort lead two figures toward the elevator, cardboard boxes in hand, dreams folded up like cheap suits. 12 years of being background noise. 12 years of being overlooked, underestimated, overwritten. Now I wrote the policy. Funny how people forget who's watching when they think no one ever sees you. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.